Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Storytelling Journey. Jay, welcome back. Can't believe it's been 2 weeks already. How you doing?
Doing good, brother. I had a recent experience here in the states, and I'll talk about it later. Hopefully, when it when the, when maybe the need arises. But it was definitely an interesting experience. Just to let you know, I'm about ready to visit my dad, who lives in Washington State, and he's invited me to come out there for my birthday. So that's coming up.
All right, so we have birthday wishes coming up. Keep us posted. I hear an echo. I don't know who's got something running in the background. If you have your LinkedIn running in the background, uh, please mute it. Um, we also want to welcome anyone who is joining us live. We'll give them a couple of minutes to join, and then we'll get started. But today we have a fantastic lineup. We've been blessed with wonderful guests, and today is no different. We're going to hear um, a story and a narrative uh, by Adrienne Reynolds. I want to welcome Adrienne to the stage, but before I do that, let's bring up her profile. So Adrienne is a certified coach. I can read her LinkedIn profile, but I'll probably do it no justice. So why don't we welcome Adrienne to the stage and let her introduce herself. Adrienne, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. How are you doing?
Fantastic. So before we went live, we were talking about the weather. So you're out in Illinois, just outside of Chicago. You probably have similar weather to what we've had in the last couple of days. Jay's in Alabama, and we've had some Alabama-like weather. It's been over 100 degrees here in Toronto for the last maybe 4 or 5 days. Today it finally broke. We got a little bit of a breeze, and things are back to seasonal temperatures and probably some rain in the forecast. But and this isn't the Weather Channel. This is the Storytelling Journey, and I'm excited to bring you along and have you share your story and your narrative with us. So why don't we get started? Why don't you introduce yourself, share with the community who you are, the community you serve, and we'll jump into this conversation.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. My name is Adrienne Reynolds, and as you said, I am a certified coach. I'm also a DISC certified practitioner. I am located in Chicago, and I've been coaching now for, let's see, since 2009. I've been a coach, and my business has evolved from just basically trying to help everyone to really leaning into leaders and change agents, right? And it's also evolved from just going from strategy and strategic planning to shifting into mindset changing. So
Well, you touched on something there. If I can just pick up on it and kind of lean into the whole storytelling, you said something that resonates with me. Uh, you started off wanting to help everybody, and I think we all do this with good intentions, and we learn at some point that we can't be all things to all people. Now, Jay's the storytelling guru. Does the same hold true when it comes to storytelling, or when sharing a narrative, you're kind of just speaking to everyone, and whoever resonates kind of leans into your narrative?
is that
Well,
for me or for Jay? Oh,
That's for Jay. I'd love to hear Jay's thoughts on that.
so there's two schools of thought with this, right? You can you can throw spaghetti at the wall and hope it sticks, right? Um, there's spray to play. That you hear these phrases often, and that's to gain a wide audience, right? But if you have a message, something that is supposed to be impactful, the first rule of engagement is know your audience. And especially if you have a message that is going to be transformational, is going to be impactful to that person's life, then I believe for me, now I'm not a mindset coach, I'm a storytelling strategist. That helps. But I think it applies. And now I'll throw it over to Adrienne and get her perspective.
So, to your point, I've heard this. What is that? Spray to play. And for years, people would always tell me, "Oh, you need a niche. You need a niche," and that just did not resonate with me because I really wanted to help everyone. But to your point, as I've grown in this over the years, you kind of do need to at least find you need to narrow your focus. And then outside of that, you'll notice that once you know your focus, there are other people who may resonate with, and then they'll join in with you. But in order for you to really, as for me myself, in order for me to really become um, a better coach and really help the people who really want the help, I had to narrow my focus. I honestly did. And that took years for me to get to, but I do think you need to narrow your focus.
Yeah, fantastic. Yesterday, I was at an event, and one of the members in the audience shared, well, what if you don't know who your ideal customer is and you're still trying to figure this out? And you and I, Adrienne, we were talking backstage before we went live. We were talking about this whole perfection mindset, and we want to manifest our dreams. We want to kind of just jump into it. And sometimes we become our biggest and most vulnerable
Mhm.
culprits, preventing ourselves from moving forward because we're kind of in that mindset that it has to be perfect. Now, the response I shared yesterday when the comment was posted in terms of, well, what if you don't know who your audience is? Do you wait till you niche down? Do you wait till you figure it out? And personally, my response is no. You know, that's part of the process. That's part of your narrative. That's part of your story. Figuring things out, trial and error. The more mistakes you make, the quicker you're going to learn and refine and understand who you are and who you serve. So,
Yeah, I agree with that. Like when we were saying, it clicked when you said that. If you don't launch, you don't learn.
that's
You
right.
got to launch to learn.
And I'm sure the same holds true, Jay, when you were writing your book, and many people who are at that crossroads wanting to write have all these thoughts, have everything written down, but they fail to launch because they feel they're not ready. What's that feeling like? What can you share with anyone who wants to manifest a piece of writing? What advice do you have for them?
Well, there's a lot of advice that's out there, but for me, the biggest thing is to not, exactly what you said, right? Don't be your biggest culprit. Get out of your own way. And I know it sounds easier said than done, but really it's taking that first step. You can't start your journey if you don't take that first step. And a lot of people get hung up on that first step. And really all you have to do in this case is put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, whatever is comfortable for you, and start writing. And really it's as simple as that, but it's also one of the hardest things for some people to do. And it's not it's not that you have a book already in mind, you've got everything ready, you've got you're going to be typing out your first chapter, right, the very first moment. That's not what I'm talking about. What I am talking about is just to put ideas down, sometimes just putting the idea down will allow you to move forward even past that first step. And so I think that's really important. And in mindset shifts or transformation, right? It really is, to me, that first step. And that first step is being mindful before changing your mindset.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Um, well, we can take that in so many directions, as we normally do on this show. But I want to take a moment now. We have more people joining us. I want to welcome those who are here joining us on Team Live. Hello and welcome to the show. Merrill loves the new studio. He too made the ESPN reference. So I kind of playing and toying around with different studios just to give and provide different vibes as to what experiences can be delivered in this format. Like, I really leaned into virtual events, and I believe it has a wonderful place to grow and has so much potential to build trust and visibility for those who are employed by someone else. And if you're in sales, it's a great these live events are great for social selling, and they're great for storytelling. So Adrienne is open to taking questions, so we're welcoming any form of engagement. Questions, drop them in the comments, and I will be sure to raise them as they are brought in. So we've now taken a program. People are starting to grow and lean into this. And I can't thank you enough. We're multi-streaming on YouTube as well as LinkedIn, and it is great to see some familiar faces in the chat. But for now, this is Adrienne's moment. So let's hear and start to unravel Adrienne's story and her narrative from a professional journey, your leadership journey. What inspired you to launch Empowered for Success? This is a business that you're running, and I understand it's a business that you'd love to one day be exclusively what you do. And hey, we've all been there. Some of us want to be there, but you're there today. Let's hear your story. What inspired it?
So I started out. Actually, my journey started. I wanted to be a lawyer. And I felt like I was really good at negotiating and arguing my point. And life kind of had me pivot. I loved helping other people and serving. And I left from working at a law firm and wound up working at a group psychotherapy facility with adults with chronic mental illnesses. And when I was there, I was introduced to coaching. And I loved it so much that I started taking classes, and I eventually wound up getting my certificate in it. And then I started incorporating that into my group sessions with the clients. And at this point, that group necessarily wasn't going to have they weren't going to be a moving the needle a lot, but my needle moved, and I saw the benefit of it. And so while I was there, I also was kind of working my way up the corporate ladder. Even though it was a small company, I was trying to work my way up. And when I got promoted into a leadership position, there was no support. It was a small mom and pop shop. So it was just me and the other owner at that point, and there was no professional development. And so what wound up happening was we wound up closing, and I took another leadership position at a healthcare facility, which they did have the professional development options, but at the same time, they were kind of in the midst of acquisition. So there was a lot of change management going on. And at the time, I'm a self-proclaimed strategist. I will try to figure something out. I'm a problem solver. That's what I do. So to me, that was great gold. But then managing people was a whole nother ball game that was thrown in there. And while I was navigating that, I wound up having to seek a coach who could help me figure out how to navigate the business side, which I felt like I was really good at and I could do, but then how do I navigate the people and empower them and encourage them and help them grow based off of, what I saw in them. And she helped me so much. To this day, we are friends. We still talk. I leverage her when I need a little bit of coaching. But when I left there, it started to resonate with me that was something, while large companies could offer that, right? Because they had the revenue in order to offer those personal development opportunities with, but those smaller companies didn't. And so I wanted to be able to help any new leaders or aspiring like change agents. I really wanted to help them on their path for leadership. And so I started out by facilitating workshops. And then over the years, I had a couple of people say, Adrienne, you should turn this into a business. And so that's how Empower for Success began. And I had no clue what it was going to look like, honestly.
Isn't it amazing that more times than not, everyone's narrative, everyone's story includes in some shape or form someone else telling us, you should turn this idea into a business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because people sometimes you see something in someone else that they don't see in themselves, and they need that encouragement.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, truth be told, we are our biggest critics, right? We don't see it because we're too busy critiquing our own thoughts and letting demons rent space in our heads that suggest, hey, this isn't going to work. Don't even bother. Yet others are just looking at you like, why aren't you doing something with this? And I'm sure the same thing happens. The rules of engagement, you wrote the rules of engagement. Was there a similar moment where people said, hey, Jay, you got to take this to the public?
Yeah. Actually, it's a little bit of a funny story because I had started talking about storytelling and using all those experiences in my past to help others. And here I am. I'm the strategist, right? I'm supposed to, hit the nail on the head. And it was like somebody said, just like Adrienne, somebody said, well, so how come you don't have a book out? And it was like, I could hear in the background my 12-year-old self going, duh. what are you doing? Right. And so that was it. I would love to have said it was an epiphany on my part, but it wasn't. It was really somebody looking at me, hearing what I was putting out there, the message that I was sharing with others, and they saw that potential. And sometimes that's what it takes, right? It's where I guess that's the theme today is we always seem to be getting in our own way. We're overthinking a lot. We sit there and sometimes we don't write what we want to write because we're so into our thoughts and not into what we're actually trying to accomplish. And those thoughts can be very intrusive and can be very detrimental to us. And so, Adrienne, you may appreciate this, but for me as a storyteller, I always say this, the story that you tell others, right? All those stories that you have in your library, that's important. Absolutely. You should be able to share your story. But the story you tell yourself is just as important, if not more important. So I just want to throw it over to Adrienne and get her perspective.
You hit the nail right on the head. What we tell ourselves is more important. We, more often than not, we're really good at masking and presenting what society or what other people think should happen, right? So we learn we're told that this is what we're supposed to do, and then we adapt to it. Meanwhile, all of the the way what we really think, how we really feel kind of gets suppressed. And then we see our representative in the workplace, right? We're not showing up authentically. And that's kind of where my coaching has really leaned into. It's really about shifting your mindset so that you're able to show up authentically, because we tend to live in this duality of who I'm being, who people think I should be versus who I truly am. And when you learn how to be yourself unapologetically, you learn how to navigate better, actually, to fulfill or be who other people want you to be. But you actually show people who you really are and the value that you truly add. But you can't do that as long as you're living a double life and a double mindset, because you don't actually know who you are.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because, and it's a great segue, and we may have already started answering the next question in terms of what are the biggest challenges we see today in the workplace from a coaching perspective. And I can share stories. And for anyone who's worked in the big corporate environment, big corporations, whether corporate America, corporate Canada, and I'm sure corporate anywhere globally, that's exactly what they expect from us. You got to be something other than who you are authentically if you want to progress. You got to play. We hear people refer to it, you got to play the game. So it becomes very convoluted, because you don't know from one side of your conversation, people are saying be your authentic self, be unapologetic on who you are, and then on the other side, hey, if you want to really progress, if you got to lean into this culture, and you got to kind of play their game their way. So you're being, it's like a tug of war, and I see that as being the biggest challenge. And I've seen it over the years, and some people will talk about the backstabbing that happens in the games. But listen, I totally agree. Be your authentic self, be unapologetic, and let the authentic person that you are prevail.
Yes. So one of the biggest challenge that I see is leaning more into what you're saying about this distrust, right? So a lot of companies want leaders and employees to kind of continue to perform to meet business metrics, while on the somewhat kind of sliding in there that you still have to, you should take time for yourself. But then the workload says something totally different, right? And so that doesn't build trust within any of the employees. And so there's more pressure to try to navigate that duality. So you got, when it comes to like the leaders who I coach, they're trying to manage change, hybrid teams. At this point, the generational differences, right now with things that are going on, we have the inclusion dynamics that are shifting. And so people are stressed, and people are looking for psychologically safe places. And that is missing in corporate. So it's a term that is starting to be used, but how well are corporations actually providing that safe space is something that's totally different. And when they don't have it, that's where you find a lot of burnout.
Oh, we'll get into burnout in a second here, but I want to go back to something you said. You mentioned two terms, two titles, two accountabilities that synonymously do not go hand in hand, yet that is the whole culture, the square peg being forced into the round hole. Managing and leading, two completely different dynamics, two different philosophies, frameworks, yet leaders today are being forced to manage, and you can't do both. What are your thoughts? Either one of you can jump in, because I can talk about this all day.
Oh my gosh. Americo. So, you know, the one word phrase comes to mind, triggered. Definitely triggered here, being, especially in corporate America, right? Um, I love that word duality, Adrienne, that you brought up, because really that's what it is, right? You live halfway in the world of, well, I'm going to be myself. I'm going to do this for myself. I want to help myself progress. And then your other foot is in the corporate door of, I need to be that soldier. I need to be the one who toes the line. I'm going to be that guy, right? I'm going to be the hero that saves the day, and we're going to get this account. And really, what you said, Mirko, is exactly right. There are a lot of companies out there that say they want leaders, but really what they want are managers. And it was a hard lesson to learn for myself when I was under that structure, because as a writer, as a creative, right, you are the creator, literally, right, of your work. And so when you're put into, and I'll use your phrase, this round hole, and I'm the square peg. I'm the square peg. I'm the square peg. And that's the hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. And so that narrative, especially over several years, because you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you. And guess whose hand that is? It's really your own hand. It's really your own hand, because you're in this situation. You chose this field of work. You got the job. It's you. And so I think for a lot of people, it's really hard for them, especially in that environment where people want managers, they don't want leaders. I think, though, there is an opportunity, even in that environment, to flourish, but it takes work. That story, your own narrative, that's what's going to help you through that type of environment. And let me tell you, it's tough, right? 12 years of being in that situation for myself. It took me I'm not going to say it was overnight. Oh yeah, I get it. Oh man, I know what to do, and I'm going to be much better for it. And it was towards the end of those 12 years where I really got it, where I really understood. And I think sometimes it takes that long. But if you have a mindset coach, they can help you along a lot further, maybe a lot quicker, because they have the tools and the resources to help you get there. Adrienne?
No, I agree with that, Jay. And one thing that you said was that people want managers instead of leaders. I think part of that is because people don't actually understand the difference between being a manager and a leader. There's lack of clarity. And so you have a lot of people who are actually saying that in their work environments, like there's a lot of ambiguity. I'm trying to figure out how to navigate ambiguity. Well, that starts at the top down. And if the top isn't clearly saying, okay, I want a leader, I want a manager, these are the type of leaders that I want, these are the type of managers that I want. Instead, they're using a blanket term of leader masking, I want a manager, or vice versa. So when you have a mindset coach, though, a mindset coach like myself, I help you figure out, first of all, what's the definition of a leader versus a manager? Where do you see yourself? To your point, you got yourself the job. It was your skills, it was your resume, it was your interview. You did that. So now, knowing who you are internally, bringing that to the surface will help you be a better leader, will help you be a better manager. Because to your point, also, both are needed, right? It's just like a car. Everybody has the car works with different parts. It has a different function and role. And so sometimes you need to be a manager, sometimes you need to be a leader. But if you don't know the difference, you don't know how to even do either one.
Very true. So I'm going to piggyback on this and talk about one of my experiences in one of the discs that I completed. Saw a job that I thought I was a good fit for. And like many, you get screened. You're lucky to be shortlisted. You're invited to complete a disc assessment. That disc assessment warranted or granted me some very good sentiment. Like, wow, this is a great disc. And they had HR had shared it with me once I was hired. It's like, kudos to you. I've never seen anything like this. I had no idea what I was looking at, but that's for a conversation for another time. Just took the kudos and took the feedback, and I was happy that they were pleased with the outcome. So I'm now selected and offered a position because I'm the ideal candidate. And the minute I get into the role and try to be what the job description required of me, I'm then being questions like, yeah, you can't do that. You can't. And it became like a pecking. Like you brought me in, you said I'm the ideal candidate. My disc assessment says that I'm someone that you can't pass up as an employee. And to your point, Adrienne, the whole clarity from the top down, like you're bringing in who you believe is the right candidate, the best candidate. And the minute you empower them to try and deliver on the accountabilities that you hired them for, you're now finding yourself in a position where you're being told you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. That's not the culture that we want here. But just weeks ago, months ago, you hired me to come in and change the culture, build the process to get you to where you want to be. And a lot of that is, and I've come across it. It's just, sometimes it's cross-generational. People find themselves at the sunset of their career and they don't want to open up and shake things up because they're just not ready for it. Others come in and may not be ready for change. Some can't embrace the change. Listen, what you do is very, very respectful. And I've been there in different capacities and different roles. It is not easy. And what ends up happening is this whole burnout, which you referred to. And why is burnout and disengagement more than just an HR issue? HR does the recruiting, they bring you in, and then you get employees who are really ready to roll up their sleeves and make an impact, make a change. And then HR has to remind us, like, yeah, the senior leadership does not want that. And they start to turn someone who was once a very valuable employee, valuable professional, and you turn them into a disengaged employee. Or on the opposite side of that spectrum, you put so much faith into this person that you start burning them out. Why is this still an issue today when we talk about, this work-life balance and so many other acronyms and analogies and references that we use to paint a picture that the workplace is something other than what it really is?
So,
Wow.
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, Americo, if you're an empath or not, but we are always like on the same wavelength, and I get triggered a lot, man. But it's a good trigger. Let me just go back to what I was talking about earlier, and I think what it really looks like for me is the ability to still be who I am in the midst of all of these issues, right? That you come across in your daily life. And really, it's about coming to grips with that narrative that I was talking about earlier. And how do you do that? And it's that ability to be mindful. And it takes time sometimes for folks. And so to me, I think what's really important for people to understand, I think going into the comments, Michael LeBlanc, he said, as a creator, I have to manage. It looks like he says I have to manage myself and lead others. And I think that's really important for people to understand is sometimes the management is something that we have to do for ourselves, and that will help us lead others. And sometimes that's it's a hard lesson to learn. But just going over some of the things that you were talking about, I was part of a gubernatorial team. I wasn't the politician or the candidate, but I was brought in to do public relations. And in the end, man, I was because I was such a young kid at the time. I was creating posters and putting up signs instead. And really, it was because of the political machine that didn't allow me to flourish. And had I had those skills, and had I been able to better manage myself, I would have rose, I believe, truly, to that leader that they were looking for. But because of politics, and this is something that's innate in corporate America, that those politicians in the workplace can really beat a person down. And I really want to get Adrienne's perspective on how do we overcome those obstacles. We talked about ourselves being the obstacles. What about your coworkers? What about those politicians?
So honestly, I still feel like some of it goes back to knowing ourselves, right? So if you know yourself, you keep mentioning how certain things are triggering you, right? If you know yourself, you know your triggers, you're able to respond to situations versus react to situations. But if you don't take the time, if you're not starting to be mindful and self-aware, then when you're with those workplace politicians, then your the clarity isn't there because you're triggered. So you can't be strategic in how you communicate. You can't be strategic in collaboration or not collaborating. So I still think me personally, I still think it goes back to knowing yourself and working on your mindset. And then you're able to use some tools like the effective listening, right? Just communication, effective communication, active listening. You're able to use those tools better in those situations with some of those people, because that's what you need. So that would be the tool I would use. It's getting to know yourself, your triggers, and then working on how to overcome or work around within yourself to change. Because a lot of times when we change, the things around us change.
Right.
And if they don't change, guess what? We can still change because we change our men anymore. So I think that's it still lies within our mindset.
Fantastic. Let's pick up on that. The whole trigger piece can go either way, both positively and negatively. So in Jay's case, I believe these are positive triggers, but triggers can also be negative. And when someone triggers someone else, with something they say, something they did, and it becomes perpetual. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. And they start consuming what a workplace bully might be saying, or what someone with negative sentiment might be saying, and negative energy for whatever reason. Always, just like social media, it gains virality, and everyone kind of culminates around the negative message but you touched on it. It's really about being self-aware and knowing where to draw the line, even though, something's triggering you positively or negatively. Know and understand your triggers and know how far you can push the limits on those triggers. Yeah,
Yeah, because that helps you set better boundaries.
absolutely.
Right. And sometimes too, again, we're all human, right? So it's when you think of working with other people, you also, one thing that helped me, I'll say, was putting myself in someone else's shoes. So just like I was trying to learn how to navigate and push past whatever traumas that I may have experienced, whatever good experience I may have, or things that I was going through outside of work, my coworker was probably doing the same thing. And so somewhat leaning into that and getting, now this is where I got out of self, and then I put myself in someone else's shoes. That also helped me in navigating the politics sometimes in the workplace bullying.
Love this conversation. Mike goes on to add that lead them to interpret his work through their own eyes, and that's also important. And that goes back to that whole square peg round hole. People learn at different paces. They consume things at different paces, and you have to be open to different learning styles. Different, just like with change management, you got your early adopters, and then you got your laggards. It's no different when it comes to coaching. When it comes to anything that we're talking here today, it's very, very similar. Wouldn't you agree?
Definitely great. When I was in college, when I was getting my MBA, I had a teacher, a professor tell us that, again, everyone can add some sort of value, right? So you have those early adopters who are just going to run with it. But then you have some people, and they might miss something, right? And so those people who are kind of behind and not on board just yet could be some of the people who are actually picking up what other people are missing. Does that make, if that makes sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so
Jay,
that mindset helped me as well. Go ahead.
Jay, I think you were going to add to that.
Yeah, I think really the important thing to understand is that we can't control other people. We can't control their interpretation of who we are and where we fit into this environment. And so if we understand that from the beginning, set that expectation for ourselves, then we're going to be better able to manage ourselves, right? If we can't do that, then we're going to be putting ourselves and the organization at a disadvantage. We're not supposed to be, how do I say this? We're not outside of the bubble, right? We, just like our employees, are important ourselves, right? And so when it comes to workforce development, I just look at it this way now. I didn't in the beginning, but when it comes to workforce development, sometimes we forget, hey, we're part of this workforce. Oh, yeah. So, really good point, Adrienne.
All right. So Mike is asking, what's DISC? Can you take a minute to share what DISC is?
This is a personality, it's a behavioral assessment. So it's kind of along the lines of like strength finders. But what it does is it actually tells someone how their behavior in their natural state versus their adaptive state. So how I act naturally in an environment, and then when I have to shift, how potentially can the perception be, or my actions that I'm taking. And so that's basically what the DISC assessment is. How you act.
So Now, I'm not going to hold you to it because I can't remember what the acronym, which each of those letters stand for. Do you have that top of mind?
D is for dominant. I is for, oh shoot. Okay, hold on. D is for dominant. I is for, I think it's inspirational. S is for steadiness, and C is for conscientious. And so a dominant person typically is like maybe like a type A personality where they tend to dominate the situation. I is so that's somebody who kind of is around people, and they like to be, they're able to coordinate with people better. Like but they like things that are, I'm sorry for lack of a better word, my dogs just kind of threw me off. They're like a steady environment. And then C is a conscientious person, and a conscientious person is someone who most definitely likes all the check boxes. They're more along the lines of like a perfectionist. And so basically what the DISC assessment says is that you may have somebody who is dominant, and then they tend to interact with folks or how they may treat people. So they may be more straightforward. They may not like a lot of detail, and they're quick to act on something. Whereas a conscientious person may take a little bit more time because they want to know the details in something.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. Mike, I hope that answers your question. Let's jump in to, since we're talking about DISC, there are other frameworks, and you have a signature framework. Now, without going too much into details and giving away the farm here, can you tell us a little bit about your framework?
So yes, so I have two frameworks. One is called PERK, and it's a productivity tool, and it really just helps people be more productive with intention, right? So it's almost like a goal setting, yet I also incorporated some of that mindset shifting in it. And so just, I can tell you the acronym is like, first you plan your day, right? We wake up with intentions, you get your plan. Then what's your inspiration, right? We all need inspiration. What's the narrative that we're telling ourselves? Sometimes we need to do affirmations every day in order to change that narrative. R is for reflecting, right? You do take time out throughout the day to check in with ourselves. This is where that self-awareness comes in. And then the C is to celebrate. A lot of times we are so focused on doing and moving and achieving that we don't take time to acknowledge where we've come from or what we've done and accomplished until we get into like a performance review, right? So how many times have performance reviews have come up and now people are scrambling to figure out, oh, what did I do? Well, if you're constantly assessing yourself and writing down your wins, then you already know where you're coming from. You can celebrate yourself. And that also helps to improve confidence and your self-worth. So that's the PERK framework. And then the positive mindset, positive is just a mindset shift. It's how to shift to a growth mindset, more so from a fixed mindset.
Beautiful. Well, thanks for sharing that. And anyone who's got questions and wants to go into more details on how these two frameworks can impact them, are you working exclusively with professionals? Do you work with businesses, teams? Like who do you work with? And tell us a little bit about who you help.
So ironically, even though I do have a niche, I still work with both. So I do work with individuals and as well as businesses. So individuals, I do one-on-one coaching. I have VIP days where for those people who just don't have time for like 6 months of coaching, I'll work with them one-on-one to get a plan, and then they could run with it. So that's the high achiever. So that's the clients, the one-on-one coaching clients. And then on the business-to-business side, I actually have now created this package called the DISC Experience, where the plan is to go into different businesses to teach the DISC assessment, to build collaboration and teamwork and help communication so that we can kind of have more psychologically safe environments where people feel more comfortable collaborating and talking and people can get clarity, right? Because then you're also learning how people communicate. So that way you're able to communicate with them better. So that's on the business side.
Beautiful. All right. So let me ask the question then, because many people think it. Some think to ask, some not think, man, I should have asked. But I'm a big believer in the support that I offer, especially from a coaching mindset. Coaching mindset should be open to different outcomes for different purposes and different people. Where we see a lot of people go to market with a 10-step, 5-step, or however many steps. Here's my program. Here's my coaching program. And you follow these steps and you're going to be a better person at the end of it. How do you measure the impact of the work that you do with your clients? What's your strategy? And because I don't want to put words in your mouth, I want you to be able to share the value that you deliver.
So the business side of me, of course, and ironically, I don't track numbers like I should. I'm starting to do that, right? Because honestly, I track my impact based off of the transformation that I see in my clients, as well as the testimonials that they give me. So, for example, I actually just was working with a client who we're at the 6-month mark. And when we kind of sat back and talked about like where she saw herself from when she started, she actually said, when I came into coaching, I really had no clue what coaching was about, didn't know what I was going to get from it. She was like, and while I didn't know, now that we're at the 6-month mark, I'm walking away with something that I actually know I needed, which was now she has more confidence. She's able to communicate better, and she knows her work, her value.
Yes.
And so that's been my impact.
Fantastic. So I come from a school of thought that if you're telling someone, you're not coaching. And it sounds like to me that what you said resonates, and I would say with confidence we're aligned. You're going to get that aha moment, those light bulb moments where people come in blindly, not knowing. It's like, oh, like I don't get why this was recommended. I don't know why I need this. Or some people are even adamant. It's like, yeah, I have no need for this. But then they realize at the end, like, wow, this was very and truly transformational. And that's because you weren't told something. You're there and you're along with that person for their journey, and you're leading and you're supporting and you're developing. And you touched on it earlier, and I'll say it because it's so important. You're celebrating. So you're not only providing clarity, but you're celebrating the progression. And that is so important. Because if you're doing a VIP day, yes, everything is compressed. But if you're doing a 6-month sprint, coaching sprint, and people can't see the end of the tunnel, you kind of lose engagement in some cases. But clarity and celebrating those milestones, no different than, once again, I'm not going to put words in Jay's mouth, but no different than his art of storytelling. You're celebrating and you're sharing your narrative, and people will learn, people will absorb through storytelling what's important to them. If you force feed them something that they have no interest in learning or wanting to hear or listen, it's all for naught. Thoughts? Either of you?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of go into what you were talking about earlier with the DISC assessment. I funny story. In the corporate world, you get a lot of those assessments, especially right around when you're getting an assessment on your work. And so they put these out there, and sometimes it's either for the individual or for the group. Well, they came up with one assessment that gave you personalities of birds, right? And I was like, okay, this is different. And I swear, I I got the peacock, and I tried. I I went back in and took it again so I could get the eagle. I wanted the eagle. I wanted the eagle, and so I deliberately, in the assessment, answered the questions so I could get the eagle. Right, and I think it that just true. And so when the group heard about what I tried to do, because you could see this, right, when you're doing this digitally. Hey, you went back and you did it again, and so it just reinforced the peacock story, and I was like, ah! So it just I'm talking about it in this way that's a little comedic, but I think that it illustrates a couple of points. One of the things is this is who you are in this moment. Now that you become mindful of it, you can go back in and change that narrative to become that eagle if you want it to. But there has to be, and again, we go back to what we were talking about earlier, and that's being mindful. You have to understand where you are in the moment. And then you can reach that step to move into being that eagle, that raptor, right? Instead of the peacock showing off your feathers. Um, I just thought that sharing that was a little bit uh, funny, but I think there's definitely a message behind it. But I think the other part where we're talking about how we handle those stories, how and you, how we maneuver through these things, right? It's definitely important for us to take that step back before we can take that step forward. I mentioned taking that step, being just willing to take that first step, but sometimes we got to take a step back so that we can see the path that's in front of us so we can take that first step forward. And for us who who understand Spanish culture, it sometimes feels like the cha-cha, right? That you take 3 steps forward and 1 step back or whatever. But it really, it's it. Sometimes that's what you got to do. Sometimes you got to step back. But in doing so, don't just keep walking backwards. Move forward once you've realized where you are in the moment.
Absolutely. I wrote earlier this week, from a professional and a business lens. Success, you can't look at success as a ladder. It's linear. You got to look at it as a lattice. And sometimes not only taking steps down or steps back, but you also take steps to the side. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, we are at the top of the hour, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're going to wrap this up with one question, and then we'll do a quick roundtable. Advice for emerging leaders. Adrienne, what's the one mindset shift every leader should make? What are your thoughts?
I think shifting from performer to present is a good shift. Like when you're in, no matter where you are in your leadership journey, right? It's easy to think that you have to constantly prove yourself, having the calendar packed because that shows that you're productive, and it really doesn't. So I think shifting from performer to present is something that leaders should really just kind of shift into. You don't have to know all the answers to lead well, but you need clarity, courage, and consistency. In order to do that, you have to stop performing and be present. And that goes back to what Jay was saying earlier. You have to be mindful. And when you're mindful, you can stop leading from fear of not being enough and start leading from the truth of who you really are and the value that you actually bring to the organization as well as to your life, right? So even if you're not a natural leader, you can learn to lead, but you won't believe that if you don't take the time to really sit in the presence of who you are. So,
Jay, any closing thoughts on that question?
No, I think Adrienne had it right. It's to understand your presence, you have to be present. I know it sounds kind of cheesy now that I said it out loud, but I think really it's the truth though, right? If you want to be able to understand your presence in either in the partnerships that you have, in the relationships that you're in the workplace, right? Where are you there? Well, first you have to be present to know where you are. And that goes back into who you are, the story that you tell yourself and the story you share with others. First, start with your story and then share that with others so that they can be helped in their journey. And I think that's where Adrienne and I kind of align, is we realized at some point that the story that we started telling ourselves would be beneficial to others as well. And that's why she became a coach and I became a storytelling strategist. And once you've understood how to be present, then your presence can make that impact.
Wow, that is beautiful. I'm not going to add anything because I think this is a perfect place to end with that alignment. So if you're not connected with Adrienne or any of us, feel free, reach out. Adrienne, for those who want to reach out to you, how can they get a hold of you?
so I have my website is www.empoweredforsuccess.org or Adrienne Reynolds on LinkedIn or Empowered for Success LLC on YouTube.
Fantastic. And for anyone watching on Team Replay, feel free, drop your comments if you have questions. We'll continue to engage in the comments. If you found this episode of value and feel that someone can benefit from it, share it with them. Share today's episode, today's replay with your community, and would love to hear your thoughts and your sentiment as to what you may have learned, what you may have had Adrienne or Jay inspire you with. I'd love to hear that in the comments. Adrienne, I want to thank you for coming out and spending the hour with us. I know it's a question every one of my guests asks. An hour? It's like, and look at that. We are now past the hour, and I'm sure if I allowed it, we can go on for another hour. But we'll close the conversation here. It has been an absolute delight. Thank you for sharing your story, your narrative, and spending or investing. I'm going to say investing this hour with us. It was absolute pleasure. Jay, as always, Jay's my brother from another mother. We're from two islands in the opposite ends of the world, but we have so much in common, and we keep triggering each other, which is one of the things I love about this episode. And every time we get together, someday I got to make my way to Bama and meet you in person.
Yeah, and I gotta make my way to Canada and and enjoy the weather there. Well, not right now because it's the
Yeah.
same.
Fantastic. All right, folks. If there were comments or questions that we left out, as always, I will circle back, make sure that everyone gets a response and we engage and continue this conversation after we are off the air. But for now, let's cue up some music and close the room and thank everyone and have a great rest of your day, wherever your day may find you, morning,
Thank you.
afternoon.